Well, hello everyone. Phil here. So I was just out on a walk this morning and I was kind of thinking about how being a witness can kind of turn you into an ex-witness in different ways. I was thinking, usually if you're a witness and you hear that somebody's left, that they've stopped attending, you're kind of wondering, whoa, what happened? They were so spiritual and now they're worldly. It's a very kind of black and white worldview, spiritual or worldly, left or right, light or dark. And to some extent, I think it's not so hard for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to sort of think the same way. And it's probably just because we were used to, we were trained to think that way for so many years. And really, it's not something exclusive to the Jehovah's Witness religion or even religion in general. There's a lot of spheres of activity where people think in black and white terms. But for ex-witnesses in particular, when you stop doing the witness routine, you stop going to meetings, or you decide that it's definitely not the truth and you're not going to believe it anymore, that's just such a pivotal moment in your life that I think it's just natural to think in terms of before that moment and after that moment. I was a witness, now I'm an ex-witness. However, I think it's kind of helpful to frame it not so much in those terms of before and after, X and Y, but more as a continuum or a journey that we're on, not to sound too woo-woo about it. And I thought there's sort of two main ways that can happen where being a witness can turn you into an ex-witness. And so the first one I was thinking about was that there's this fundamental characteristic of almost all witnesses that we're doing it because we want to help other people. Now, sure, there's, the hope of the paradise and the resurrection and all that, and it's definitely a very powerful motivator. But to keep going out in service year after year with typically very little results, I think that's driven by a real desire to help others, to try and make their lives better. Even if you can just get one person, that makes it worth it. And the trouble was just as witnesses, we didn't have the tools to be able to do that. In my head, I often picture it as a kid who's inculcated from infancy to be a firefighter. And so say his parents are firefighters, he knows how that benefits the community. He sees the personal satisfaction that can be gained by being a firefighter. And so he goes to the firefighter classes, which are held twice every week. But each time he goes, he never gets any training on how to actually put out fires. Instead, they practice sales techniques about how to recruit more firefighters into the department. And I think that's kind of like how it is to be a witness. You want to help other people, but then the only way you're really allowed to express that desire is by preaching. And generally, that's not very effective. I think that's sort of one of my desires down deep, is to see the society sort of step back from having a monthly hour requirement of getting so many hours preaching door to door or cart witnessing. I think probably at this point, just having a few billboards up around town would be just as effective as all the carts scattered around the city. And then if that happened, it would sort of open up being able to help others in so many other practical ways. And I'm not even talking about things like soup kitchens and homeless shelters, but even just within the congregation, then, you have things mowing older friends' lawns, spending the afternoon with an elderly witness, repairing a witness's house that needs a hand, that kind of thing. I think even many staunch Jehovah's Witnesses these days sense that, deep down they would admit that the preaching work is not really a very effective use of their time anymore. And so there's a lot of witnesses that sort of seek to correct that by maybe they join a foreign language group or move where the need is greater. And even those things usually these days doesn't yield the kind of satisfaction that people are looking for. So I think that subconscious sense that the preaching work is on some level a waste of time, that it's not really helping people anymore as we wish that it would, well, that can kind of create a witness who begins to wonder what he could really do to actually help people. And that line of thinking is one that can eventually, perhaps, lead a person to grow beyond the Watchtower organization and find ways of giving, of volunteering in the community that really give a good bang for your buck in terms of time invested. So that's one way that being a witness can turn you into an ex-witness. A second way I was thinking about is the value placed on truth as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, for somebody that converts and becomes a witness as an adult, they're generally a seeker. They're searching for something, for meaning, for truth in some way in their life. They're on this quest to find truth. And if they run into the witnesses can seem to offer those answers that they're searching for. Now, for somebody that's born into the truth, they aren't really given that same opportunity to search around for different things, but they're raised with this deep love of truth. They place a high value on that. You know, you learn, even as a little kid, you learn to defend the beliefs that you believe are the truth, even in the face of ridicule or persecution. You kind of develop this philosophy, this mindset that you're ready to sacrifice everything if need be for the truth. You would die before you renounce the truth that you hold dear. Then if by one route or another you learn little bits of things, you pick up on things that put cracks in that solid belief that this is the truth, well, it's hard for someone who's learned so long to value truth so highly. It's hard to ignore that. Some people definitely can for a long time, but typically it does tend to gnaw at you a little bit. Ex-Mormons have a good metaphor. They describe it that everyone has a shelf. And so the things that kind of make you go, that doesn't quite seem to make sense to me. Well, you take that and you put it up on your shelf. And, you figure, well, that'll be clarified. It'll be corrected down the road. Or maybe I'm just not understanding it right now. And so as time goes by, you're putting these things up on your shelf. And, they're kind of growing in weight on that shelf. And there may come a day when your shelf can't hold anymore and the shelf breaks. And that's when you're moved to take action, to actually be willing to look at jwfacts.com or watch a John Cedars video or read Crisis of Conscience. Every Mormon, every witness, everyone has a shelf. And the thing is that after your shelf breaks, you're still you. You're still the same person. You're still a seeker of truth, a person who loves and values truth. And so the same thing that made you become a witness, that made you prepare for the meetings, that made you do personal study, well, that's the same thing that makes you want to learn what may be wrong with witness beliefs. It sort of becomes like being an Israelite back in Bible times. So at that time, Israel was God's one true organization on the earth. If you wanted to serve Jehovah, you needed to be in Israel. Now, were there unfaithful kings that led Israel and Judah now and then? Yes. As you read the Bible, sometimes it seems like there's more unfaithful than faithful kings. So for an Israelite, sometimes they had to make a decision. Say they're living in a time when the king was unfaithful and he was directing everybody to worship other gods. So now they had to decide whether to do what the king said, because he was the visible leader of Jehovah's organization, or make a stand for truth and do what they knew was right, even if it's not what the king, what the organization was telling everybody to do. And so that's kind of what it can be like today. We learn that serving God and serving his organization may not necessarily always be the same thing. So as we absorb this new information and we're kind of processing everything, we're still the same people that we were trained to be as witnesses. And what is that? We were trained to be proclaimers. We want to spread the truth. We want to tell our friends and our family. It actually kind of reminds me of Tony Morris from the governing body describing when he first became a witness. Let's take a listen.
I must confess, however, that when I first learned the truth, I was not very tactful, especially when I talked to my immediate family. Because my first love for Jehovah burned so strongly within me, I boldly but bluntly preached to them. I dearly loved my brothers, John and Ron, and forcefully shared the truth with them. I later had to apologize for my insensitive manner. However, I never cease praying that they will accept the truth. Since then, Jehovah has educated me, and I have become more tactful when I preach and teach.
So, of course, Tony's talking here about becoming a witness, but it's pretty much the same with many of us after watching some John Cedars videos or whatever. We feel impelled to do the same thing and talk to everybody about what we're learning. I know I definitely sent my share of blunt and angry emails when I was first waking up. As Tony advises, a softer and more tactful approach is usually more effective. But that desire really just comes from the same place, wanting to spread the good news about truth. And being a witness is good training too for subsequent steps. As we grow in accurate knowledge, there may come opposition from well-meaning family and friends because their shelf hasn't broken yet. It's not at the same point as ours. And so they may push back against this new stand that we're taking. But as witnesses, we weren't raised to be weak, to be cowed, just because others don't share our beliefs. We learned every week at the meetings how to stand up for what we believe in, to be ready to sacrifice everything if necessary for the truth. That's who we were trained to be as witnesses. And now we're just following where that training leads us. And it may lead us to growing beyond the Watchtower religion. It's simultaneously one of the most painful and the most rewarding processes we'll probably ever go through. If you watch a video of a chick that's breaking out of its shell, or a butterfly breaking out of its chrysalis, or if you see a woman giving birth, it's not a gentle process. It's hard. It's painful to watch, but the end result is so worth it. Now, by end result, I don't want to say there will come a specific point when we look around and say, now I am completely happy. My life is now perfect. Everything has been achieved. Again, it's not this black and white X versus Y thing, but a spectrum. It's a journey. I don't think there's a person on earth that really could say their life is 100% truly perfect, no matter how much money or fame or family they have. But as we look back to previous times, are we happier than we were? Are we more content? Are we growing and progressing in a direction that is positive? I think many of us would say, yes, we are. And if not, well, what can we do to shift that trajectory just a little bit, just a tiny change to work on that? Thinking about it kind of in geometry terms, if you're heading in one direction and you change the angle just a teeny tiny amount, half a degree, just a little change, as time goes by further and further, will you end up with major changes, major improvements down the road. It's kind of like the movie, What About Bob? Baby steps, the key to success. So yeah, that's just what I was thinking about on my walk today, that in an interesting way, the witness religion can create people that become ex-witnesses in two ways. They foster that desire to help other people, and they develop a deep desire to love and defend truth, to be willing to make personal sacrifice if necessary in order to stand up for what we know to be true. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to, and have a great day.